Ozonics Killerwinds podcast. Back again, and we are in a new location.
Yep. Something we've never done before.
If you hear background noise, sorry.
It's because there is background noise.
We are at the Great American Outdoor Show. Oh, I can't even say it. We're at the Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And we are doing the podcast pre-day one.
Pre-day one, yep.
Yep, pre-day one. So when this podcast airs, it will be airing on day 4.
Yes.
But we're in day 1 right now.
Yep.
Got everything set up, and we did a podcast last year while we were at the shows, and we did it at the VRBO that we were staying at. We're like, You know what? Let's just show up early and do it here.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool background. So if you're listening, you're not getting to see it, but if you're watching it,
yeah,
you can see behind us. We're sitting in our booth is in the archery room.
Yep.
And if you walk in the archery room and you basically just turn right,
Yep.
we're right next to Lancaster Archery, and we're right on the right side on the right when you walk down that first aisle on the right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've got a nice space.
Yeah, no, we thought it'd be kind of cool too, see the people kind of walking around and kind of give you a feel for the show a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though it's before the show even starts.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
You get what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So today what we're talking about how we've seen the whole hunting thing change over the years.
Yeah.
When I come to these shows every year, it's interesting because even just walking around yesterday with setting up, it's crazy how you see new companies, new brands.
Yep.
Oh, hey, look at that guy's here. Oh, hey, look at that brand's here.
Mm-hmm.
You see people and you see manufacturers just pop up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so I thought today we would kind of talk about how we've seen that happen, in lots of different ways across the hunting space.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing about this conversation too is that it's kind of crazy because we have the same perspective in a lot of ways, but then we have a very different perspective in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You had made a point before we started that I'm 40, you're 26.
26, yeah.
So we're about a 15-year difference.
Yep.
So when I was 18 years old, you were 3.
That's really weird.
When I was 18 years old, you were in diapers.
Yeah.
Yeah, mom was still wiping the butt.
Yeah, little diapies.
Little diapies. Yeah. Probably size 6s. It's terrible that I know that because I got 5 kids because I have a almost 3-year-old in diapers right now. So there's a part of it where our perspectives kind of overlap, but then there's a good section of it that it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of yours starts, mine is more kind of in the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
For the principle of the conversation.
Yeah.
So we're just going to kind of jump all over the place and talk about a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
So to start, we've talked about this on the podcast before about the products that are kind of the gear, I guess you could say, that are the Mount Rushmore of hunting.
Yeah.
I would say the Mount Rushmores of hunting that have changed in both of our lifetimes, I would say, are camo.
Yes.
Tree stands.
Yes.
Compound bows.
Yep.
Trail cameras.
Yes, that's exactly what I would say too.
Yep. I would say you could also put in there ozonics.
100%.
Just because of how much it's completely taken the whole scent control game and flipped it upside down.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I guess you'd have to be bigger than Mount Rushmore. But
yeah. Mount Rushmore plus 1.
And there could be you could add other things in there too. I didn't mention ground blinds.
Right.
Ground blinds is right there.
Yeah.
And how much that has absolutely surged. Now you could, if you had this conversation a couple of years now, you could probably say saddles would be in that conversation.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because they were there and then they fell off. Now they're come back
up. Super popular now.
So,
yeah, box blinds too. I mean, it's kind of the same thing as ground blinds.
Yeah, just blinds in general. Yeah. But so let's start with, within that, let's talk about, let's just start with ozonics because we would see Ozonics Killerwinds podcast. Let's start there.
Yeah.
I've told this story. Sorry, I got a cough.
Bless you.
Sorry about that. We've talked about this on the podcast before about my experience pre-ozonics, post-ozonics.
Yeah.
Starting really getting serious about whitetail hunting as a teenager.
Yep.
Like 12, 13, 14 years old. I remember watching all the hunting videos and watching stuff on TV or whatever it was, and seeing all these guys using sprays and suits and cover scents.
Yeah.
And even really before that, my grandpa was really the one that kind of taught me how to hunt.
Right.
We used to take pine boughs and put them in like a trash bag, put our gear inside of it. That's what he did. He used, fox urine and all sorts of crazy stuff to try to drop it on our clothes to cover our scent. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it was a big rigmarole.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've told the story before about how I was the guy. You can count them. It takes more than two hands, but I would get up in the morning and I had special, soaps. I had special shampoos. I had special towels. I had, at one time when I was living in this little house, I had a special, I bought this extra washer dryer that was only for my hunting stuff.
Yeah.
I had special laundry detergent. I had special dryer sheets.
Yeah.
I had special towels that I only dried off with when I got out of the shower.
Yeah, the whole kit and caboodle.
I had special clothes that I wore just at the house that just were for the house to the truck, not my hunting stuff. And it wasn't even a truck at that time. It was a Nissan Maxima.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can actually fit a deer on a Nissan Maxima, just so you know, between the back windshield and the spoiler.
Yeah.
You just gotta rope it down. A lot of people give you the number one when you're driving down the highway, which I don't know why that was so offensive, but where else are you supposed to put it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'd have special sprays. I'd spray myself down. I had special containers. Everything would go in, and then I'd drive out to where I was going. I used to use special gum, chew special gum, and then I would finally get to where I was going. I would put on then maybe a different set of clothes that was just for the walk-in.
Yep.
Or maybe some of my hunting clothes, not all of them.
Yeah.
Spray down again. Put my other clothes in like a Ziploc so it didn't, get real smelly.
Right.
And then get out to where I was going at the base of the tree, put on my hunting clothes, spray down again.
Yeah.
Have some sort of carbon suit or scent lock suit or whatever type of suit it was that was supposed to help get rid of my odor. And then I would get up in the tree stand, and if I farted, I could still smell it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd sit up there, I'm like, well, what the heck is going on? And my experience taught me that no matter how much I tried, I was still giving.
Yeah, exactly.
And whether you give an inch or a mile, you're still giving when it comes to that whole thing. Close only counts on horseshoes and hand grenades.
Yep.
And so there was a point where I just finally just stopped doing all of it.
Right.
And there was a lot of years that's the way it was.
Yeah.
I just wore my regular deodorant and showered normal and made life a lot easier because it didn't matter if I did all of it or none of it. When I got deer on the downwind side, I got winded.
Yeah.
And that's really when, for me, it was back in 2011, 2012, when I first had an opportunity to meet Scott Elrod, the owner of Ozonics, and took him on an elk hunt, and that's when it all really changed for me.
Yeah, exactly.
And we talked about that before, but
yeah.
And it's interesting now to see, even like talking to Scott and hearing him talk about how this whole thing has gone for him. When he first started this, it was the HR 100. It was this big metal box unit that weighed as much as a boat anchor. And all these other, companies in the hunting industry, all these other people said it was, snake oil, right? Like, there's no way, that doesn't work, da-da-da-da. There was all this stuff about how it was just a complete fallacy.
Right.
And he knew it worked.
Right.
He really knew. He knew the science behind it. And it's interesting now, even in the time that I've been at Ozonics, I've been at Ozonics since 2016. August 15th, 2016 was my first day. When I first started Ozonics, I felt like we talked to a lot of people and we still had to try to convince them. We'd talk to people and they would be like, man, I don't really understand how this works. Talk me through this whole thing.
Right.
And we would have to do that for season after season after season. And it felt like somewhere in like 2019, 2020, 2021, all of a sudden it just felt like a flip kind of switched.
Yeah.
And it went from people asking, because we still get people that ask how it works.
Right.
But now what we hear so much of is man, I got a buddy that swears by it. Man, I don't know, I don't really understand it, but man, I got a buddy that swears by it. I got a buddy that's killing some just giants. I got a buddy that just told me he's been using one for 3 years.
Yeah.
He didn't tell anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I think Ozonics is like a guilty pleasure for people.
Yeah.
Or they don't want their other buddies to know.
Yeah.
So I feel like now we've kind of transitioned where it's gone from this whole just trying to explain the science and the technology to now we're just now we're talking about how to use it better, how it can be that much more effective. Before it felt like we were trying to teach people how to drive. Now we're trying to teach them how to go faster.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like, I guess my scent control kind of journey was sort of the same. I mean, I wouldn't say I was as deeply with everything from the washing your clothes. I mean, we wash our clothes and we put them in special totes, but that was really about it. Sprayed down before the hunt. The one big thing that I remember from hunting with my dad was using the old buck bomb.
Oh, yeah.
Set that out by the decoy or just out in front of us. Set that thing off and let her run a little bit before the hunt starts. But yeah, other than that, though, that was the biggest change, is going from that now to ozonics. So
yeah, and it's been interesting to, like, in the time that you've been at ozonics, see, again, you didn't have you use ozonics at Midwest Whitetail, but I feel like you kind of got taken to another level when you started, we started hunting together and hunting in Iowa.
Yeah, especially because it's like I knew what ozonics did, but like until I started hunting with you, because you understand it like it's the back of your hand.
Yeah.
You've been working with it for years now. And so once you kind of started to teach me, it just very quickly just clicked. Mm-hmm. Like how it should be worked, how to set it up. And man, I tell people all the time, I've seen deer do things that I have never seen before.
Oh, yeah.
It's just crazy.
Well, I'll tell you, and it's interesting because you can really simplify it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like over these last few years, especially when we were here at these shows and we get a chance to talk to a lot of people, what you start to understand is that we are affecting deer's behavior.
100%.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Holy cow. We're affecting their behavior.
Yeah.
Right? Their eyes might play tricks, their nose or their ears can fool them, but their nose doesn't lie.
Yes.
If they don't like something they see, they don't like something they hear, they're going to circle because their nose is the truth.
Yeah.
Right? And it's so crazy how when they get on the downwind side, pre-ozonics, or when you start hunting with ozonics, you go, wow, I've never seen a deer act like that on the downwind side.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that a deer, that's the way they wanted to walk into the field.
Yeah.
Because if on that downwind side, usually they won't come out that way.
Right.
Or they come out and they're just acting super skitty. We're affecting animals' behavior.
Yep.
Big time.
Yep.
So yeah. No, yeah, it's pretty insane. Like I said, it's really, really fun being here. This show is going to be really interesting. This is the first show that people are going to have the opportunity to touch the new HR 600.
Yeah,
so that's
new
HR
600 and the smart clamp too.
Yeah, we got the smart clamp, which is going to be really awesome.
Bunch of new stuff.
Yep, removable coil.
Yep.
So it's going to be a heck of a show. We've got last year we just kind of had just the way it worked out for the fall, which is kind of a good problem to have. We ran out of carry bags.
Yep.
We've got carry bags here at the show again this year. They're actually a pretty cool green color.
Yes.
A little bit bigger to fit the HR 600.
Yep.
So yeah, it's going to be a really good show. And like you said, it's interesting to see how ozonics and everything is always, just evolving, and just seeing how with this whole scent control thing, it's just wild to think about how much it's changed.
Yep.
And I've had this conversation with you before. We've talked about this on the podcast, that when I first started taking jet deer hunting, I had to make a real big choice, because like you said, I've talked about the erase the line story. When I was a kid, my grandpa used to give me Windicator, let me puff it.
Yeah.
And he would always ask me, what does that mean? I'd say, that's where the line is. And he taught me that the line was where the deer are going to smell you.
Yep.
If you don't shoot them before they get to that line, you actually used to be rabbits.
Yeah,
That's what he gave me Windicator for was rabbits. But, ozonics started to erase the line.
Right.
It wasn't a permanent marker. It was a colored pencil, right? I could start to really change where that line was and didn't have to think about it or worry about it as much. All of a sudden I was hunting all the way around me, not just on the upwind side.
Yeah.
And so when I started hunting with Jet, I was like, man, we're taking him. I'm like, gosh, I got to make a decision here.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't take the ozonics at first because I wanted to get deer on the down one side, and I wanted to see his reaction of disappointment and disbelief and looking at me like befuddled, like what just happened?
Yeah.
Like they were walking right in, and then they just turned, and what was that noise they were making?
Mm-hmm.
Man, dude, that's a deer blowing.
Yeah.
And you hear her, she's still doing it. She's probably 200-300 yards away.
Yeah.
She's still blowing at us.
Yeah.
So, and then now I have introduced ozonics, and he's started to see how it works.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's super important you did it that way, because I think at the end of the day, if you're a new hunter getting into it and you start using ozonics, I feel like you don't fully understand what it's actually doing then.
Yeah.
If you hunt without it first, you see what happens when they get downwind, and then you realize what you're actually trying to avoid, kind of. Right. So I think it's a good way to start, and it will, in the end, make you better with ozonics.
Well, I think inherently a lot of people, when they first start hunting, that is what they do. I was no different. I was just excited to get out there.
Yeah.
Right. So you're probably going to get a gun or a bow, and you're going to get some camo, and you're going to get out there. Yeah. So you're probably going to experience what happens when you get there on the downwind side.
Exactly.
But it's interesting to think that there's a generation of hunters now. I always talk about the son, the dad, and the grandpa. The reality is there's the dad and the grandpa definitely remember before ozonics.
Yep.
And the son, you do too, but there's sons now that don't.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, there's sons walking around here. We'll have guys that walk up that have been come to the show. We see them every single year, and their sons only know hunting with ozonics.
Right.
It's pretty insane to think about.
It is insane, yeah.
Think about that.
Yep.
All right, what's next? You pick the next one.
Let's do trail cameras.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one.
So, yeah, for me, I remember very, very early. Actually, my dad didn't really run trail cameras for a really long time. But I remember my Uncle Zip, he always had one or two going. And I do remember that it was one of the ones where you got to take the film in to get it all printed out and stuff like that. And then after a couple years, Dad finally got some. And his was just a regular SD card, no cell cam stuff. And then we didn't really move into cell cams. Probably 5 years ago was our first cell cams that we got.
Yeah.
So we were a little bit late to the game on that, but yeah, it's just crazy, the technology now. And I mean, hooking solar panels up to them, sending it right to your phone, getting videos right to your phone. It's just crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. And especially too, the amount of companies there are that have come up that are making cell cameras now. So yep. So yeah, that's changed a lot for me in my time. Yeah. Like I said, the first trail cameras I remember, they weren't mine. I remember walking through the woods. I grew up in a little town in north central Iowa called Belmont, and I remember walking through the woods, and I saw this big box like tied to this tree, and I walked up to it. I'm like, what is going on? I didn't know what it was. Looked like a birdhouse, probably. Yeah, seriously. But it was low, and I'm like, well, why? What the heck? I remember I was like, what is going on? And it was during the day, so I don't really remember it like flashing or anything. Yeah. But I got like done, and I remember calling a buddy of mine. I'm like, hey, like, I saw this thing, and he's like, yeah, man, that's a trail camera. I'm like, a trail camera? What are you talking about? And that was what they did is just exactly what you're saying. The first trail cameras were literally, it was a little camera on the inside that would go off, and then you had to take the film out and go get it developed. Oh, that's so funny. The first brand that I really remember that I was just like enamored with was Cuddyback. Yeah. Oh man, I remember being a kid. I remember that blue Cuddyback logo. Yeah. And then and they talked about their big shtick always was their shutter speed. Yeah. The motion sensitivity, right? And I remember, man, I saved up, and I was bound and determined. I bought one of the first cameras I bought was like a Cuddyback camera. I thought that was just going to be the cat's meow, and it was. I mean, it was like, but and then like you said, I remember back in 2010, 2011, I was working out in Colorado, and where I was working, they got this trail camera. And they asked me to set it up, and I'm like, okay, what are we doing? They're like, go set it down the way here. Da-da-da. I'm like, okay. And they're like, it's a cellular camera. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah. So it's got like, it connects, and then it just sends the images, and then you can look at them. At that time, it was like on a website. Yeah. I'm like, really? Like, oh yeah. And it was this whole thing. I won't mention the brand that had it, or that I did it with, but I was just thinking, I'm like, whoa, this would be awesome. Yeah. And we almost did it kind of as like when we first were like testing it,
and like, or they sent us one. We were just kind of like, oh, I guess we'll set it up. Or like just set it, because then it had to have cell phone reception. You had to somewhere. We knew where we didn't have cell phone reception. Like, okay, we'll set it here. And then, like you said, now it's insane to think how far it's come.
Yeah.
Actually, we were here at the Harrisburg show. The winter before Tacticam came out with their cell camera.
Yeah.
We were the guys from Tacticam. It's crazy how much that's evolved. It used to be that the owners of Tacticam would be at the show.
Yeah.
You would see those guys. Oh, and they would be here, and they invited us one like that week to come to this VRBO that they had.
Yeah.
This big VRBO, like this big house, and it actually had an elevator in it. It was kind of crazy.
Jeez.
And they would like cook meals at night, and there was all these people there, and so it was really cool to like run into guys that you knew and stuff.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there talking and chatting about just stuff, and he's like, and one of the guys like, hey man, you want to see something? I'm like, sure. And they showed us a Tacticam reveal.
Yeah.
And it was a prototype at that time. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, man, we're coming out with a cell cam. I'm like, really? And I remember them saying like their thing is they're like, yeah, it's going to be a pretty inexpensive camera. And then you just pay like a monthly deal. I'm like, dude. And I'm like, man, that's a huge shift for you guys.
Yeah.
Like from like point of view cameras and everything's like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
You know? And now I have 7 of them, right?
Yeah,
and now
exactly.
everybody has 7 of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Actually, Zip, he has one of the originals still, and he still uses it today.
Well, so do I. Some of mine are the original reveals.
His is older.
Oh, really?
It looks totally different.
Oh, okay.
It's got batteries like in the door.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's crazy.
But yeah, so it's just wild to think how far that's come now. And like you said, and that's like even back in the day. I remember as a teenager. Well, it was really my first. I didn't get a camera until I was probably in my early 20s or whatever.
Yeah.
But I remember that was it's so funny even to think about how much that's changed in how we check trail cameras.
Right.
Think about that.
Yeah.
You used to have to walk out to the cameras. And not only that, but I would do it where I would walk out to the cameras as I was trying to go hunting.
Yeah.
Right. I would walk a particular way to check a camera, switch batteries. You never knew where you were at on batteries.
Yeah.
So you always had like a log of batteries with you just in case.
Yeah.
Some of those old cameras, they weren't even double A's. They were C's or D batteries. I had some of those that had these tubes on the sides. They used to put these big D batteries in or C batteries. It's crazy.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then there for a while, everybody, and I think this still happens, but for a while there, then the shtick was everybody would steal your SD cards or steal your cameras. Well, then you didn't know, you couldn't do nothing. So then it was locked. You put lock boxes on them. You had chains on them. I mean, a deer probably walked by and was like, what is going on? There was all this stuff cable wrapped around the tree. I bought these lock boxes. So it's just interesting to think how much that's changed now that we just don't do any of that.
Yeah.
They just transmit right to your phone. Boom, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. We talk a lot about trail cameras on the podcast. Love trail cameras.
Obsessed.
Yeah, we're pretty. Yeah, it's just fun to nature watch, I guess, more than anything else.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. What else we want to talk about? I know I said we were going to talk about the Mount Rushmore, but gosh, on this pace, we're going to be here for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Let's talk briefly about tree stands. Here's what I'll say about that. It's interesting to think that I have a buddy that his dad, when I was a kid, that was like kind of right at, like, tree stands were out there.
Yeah.
A lot of guys were building them,
Right.
welding stuff and building
yeah.
them themselves. He used to just climb up in a tree and he would stand on a branch. That's how he deer hunted. And then I had another buddy that his dad used, and I actually saw one of these. I could find the picture of it somewhere on my phone. It's actually near Clear Lake on one of the places I shoot does.
Okay. Yep.
His dad used crotch boards.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was basically, he took a 2x12 or a 2x10 and he cut a V out on each side of it, a V going into the board.
Yep.
So when you held the board, it had a V, kind of 2 V's facing in.
Yeah.
And he would carry that with him, and then he would take that and find the crotch of a tree, and he would just take that board and he would stuff it down in there and he kind of stomp on it.
Yeah.
And he would stand on the crotch board. And then he would just leave the crotch board there and then he would go get another. He had some 2x12s at home, and he'd cut out another V, the V's, and then if he went another spot, he'd have another crotch board with him. That's
so
how he
funny.
did stands. I actually saw one of those crotch boards. Ty, I think we've talked about this.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah,
have.
that was a pretty cool thing because I walked up on it and I looked up. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's this crotch board, and that thing had to have been seriously. He probably had those. He probably used those crotch boards in like the 80s,
Jeez.
and it was all grown in. You could only see part of it, but I knew what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it had grown in like you couldn't even see the V.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it's crazy to think how far that from what it's gone to that to now. I remember I saved up in my early 20s and bought, or as a late teenager and bought a Lone Wolf tree stand.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow! I thought I was really something, man.
Just the cat's meow.
Oh man, I remember I had a Lone Wolf tree stand. I thought that was insane. And then in my mid late 20s, I bought a Lone Wolf climber. Man, I hunted out of a climber for years, and I really loved climbers.
Yeah.
And now I kind of throughout that, obviously did a lot of hang-ons.
Yep.
And it's interesting now. I think the big change with tree stands, obviously over the years, just how much they've evolved and just gotten like more durable, sleeker, how you can adjust them, all that stuff.
Yep.
But now, man, I think the thing, and I think you're gonna nod your head and agree with me, is weight.
Yeah,
Everything
big
is
time.
lighter, smaller.
Yep, exactly.
It's incredible. Like even just walking around here just yesterday, there's a few brands that I've never even heard of.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's different. That's new. And then obviously the other big thing on the tree stand side of things, which is not really a tree stand, but along the same length, is saddle platforms.
Yeah. So many of them.
It's incredible how much. It's really interesting. I think that's what's really fun about tree stands is you really see the creativity
Yes.
in what they do and
Yeah.
how they do it. And it's like functional creativity. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, everything's kind of done with a purpose.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're doing this because you're trying to go really far deep and you're counting ounces. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense why you're doing that. And then you see some of these saddle platforms, how they all lay out. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some are bigger, they're flat and they kind of slant at the end, so you
off,
can
yeah.
lean farther. And
Yep.
it's really, really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. And honestly, I feel like the tree stands I know that it changed, but I feel like that was the least amount that I really
More consistent.
noticed. Yeah.
A constant.
Yeah, because we were still hunting the same double ladder stands that I hunted in as a kid.
Yep.
They're still in the same exact tree,
Mm-hmm.
So that stuff didn't really change. I think it's just because I didn't really personally explore it too much
Yeah.
growing up until now. Obviously now I'm hunting a complete different way than I had before with the saddle and hang on stuff. So that one I didn't really see as much
Yep.
until a later time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that's definitely come a long way. I mean, sticks, a full set of sticks that weigh 4 pounds, like, what?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
Tethered has sticks that are 15 ounces a piece.
Yeah, like, it's
incredible.
It's just crazy. And like you said, too, like, everything's built with a purpose. I mean, you can buy a stand and sticks that,
Fit together.
so you can just carry it in all in as
You
one.
can use
like,
you can use the seat as like a shelf,
Exactly,
like a meat
yeah.
shelf if you were trying to quarter something out.
Yep.
It's pretty incredible.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess the other one we talked about in Mount Rushmore is bows. Man, we could go into compound bows forever.
Yeah.
The thing I would say as kind of another part of that with the bow part is it's interesting because as a kid, I remember, Matthews has been around longer than I've been bow hunting.
Yeah.
Okay. Right about the same time. But
Yeah.
I didn't really think about it that much at first. As a younger person, I was, like a lot of kids, shotgun hunt, rifle hunt. There was a lot of shotgun hunting in Iowa.
Yeah.
But then, quickly really started focusing on bow hunting.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen the compound bow evolve. Just insane to think about how far it's come
Oh, yeah.
with, a lot of these different brands. You know what I mean? Matthews was the brand for me. Being in the Midwest, being in Iowa,
Right, yeah.
same for you in Wisconsin.
Yep.
They're from Wisconsin.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess the thing I would say to that now that also just to tie into the compound part is kind of the 1B to that is crossbows.
Yeah.
It's incredible to see how far crossbows have come. I remember years and years ago, how big crossbows were, how wide they were, and and then be like, oh, the arrow, it's not an arrow, it's a bolt. It's like, what do you mean by that? And then try to figure that part out. And then now, especially here in Pennsylvania, they can use crossbows.
Yeah.
Lancaster's got a huge crossbow set up literally right behind us. It's insane to see. They move a lot of crossbows here.
Yeah, they do.
But it's insane now. The limbs of a crossbow they're not even perpendicular to the to the let's just call it the main bar or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
The chassis of the crossbow. Some are set parallel with the chassis. It's like, whoa, what is going on? It's incredible how far that stuff has come.
Yeah, it's insane.
Dorge down there at the end, the guy with Fire Knox.
Yeah.
He does like retrofits on crossbows and makes them even faster.
Yeah.
It's just insane how far that's come.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of, in my opinion, it feels like that has kind of went in leaps and bounds in the last 5-ish years. It just feels like the technology in those have exploded.
Yeah, I remember
recently.
I would agree with parts of that. Yeah, because like I remember like in 2014, I got a chance to tour 10 Point.
Okay.
Remember they had this big machine that they were dry firing a 10-point crossbow. They had a little clicker. It had been dry fired like 10,000 times. It was still holding up. And like that, and I remember looking them then and being like, whoa. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now it's like gone way above that. And so you're right. It's insane. Like even back then, the technology was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But geez, they just kind of keep outdoing themselves.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Faster.
Yeah. Lighter too.
Lighter. Yeah. It used to be
More
like,
compact.
oh, you can't hold them up. Oh, they're too big. Well, they got rid of that.
Yeah.
They're smaller. They're it's insane. All right. What's next? You pick next thing.
Let's talk about camo.
Oh yeah.
I think this one might be up there with the most I've seen change. I just remember as a kid, the only camo you ever saw was Realtree.
Yep.
That's what everybody wore. And now you come to a place like this, and I mean, man, there's so many different camos. You got Sitka, Kuiu, First Light, you name it.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think that to piggyback off what you're saying there, I feel like we're kind of living in the digital age of camo right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. I mean, it's definitely the digital age.
Yeah.
Like I said, I remember, my first camo as a kid, I went to the True Value in Belmont, Iowa, and I bought a pair of, it wasn't even Carhartt, it was some off-brand, and I bought a couple cans of spray paint, and I took leaves in my yard, and I sprayed. I didn't think I had the money for normal camo, and so that's what I did.
Homemade camo.
Yeah. Or I just wore, and it's funny how that's gotten so popular now. I used to wear just like Carhartt brown stuff.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the money for camo.
Yeah.
I didn't have like hand-me-downs, so I just was like trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, I agree with you. For me, it was Realtree and Mossy Oak.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Mossy Oak too.
Yep, that was the two big ones that felt like. And for a lot of years, from the outside looking in at this whole hunting space thing, those were the brands.
Yeah.
Realtree tree bark.
Yeah.
I remember the Bill Jordan commercials where he would stand, or the shows where he would stand and he would talk about the camo pattern, and he'd have a tree sitting there and how much it matched, and it would show how tedious he worked to create the realistic parts of it.
Yeah. The commercial I remember is like, it would just show like a forest or whatever, and they're like, how many hunters do you see?
Yeah.
And you'd sit there and try and find them, and all of a sudden they would all look out and peek and stuff like that,
Yeah.
So, no, and another thing, too, is it's not just the camo patterns either. I mean, the functionality of camo now, too. I mean, there's, you can get stuff for hunting in 90-degree days to 10 below, you know what I mean? And it's just, there's just so much that you can choose from now.
Yeah, I mean that's where I was going to go next in that. Exactly, you're right. I'm right there with you. I think that it's interesting to see Realtree and Mossy Oak were just they were the juggernaut for so long, and they're still great brands and great camo. They're still out there, you know what I mean? But it felt like there was a door that got opened when Sitka came out.
Yeah,
and you look back on it now and you're like, whoa, what a shift.
Yeah.
And then that was a shift. And then it was an even bigger shift when Kuiu came out.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys can't see it, but right here in front of us, we've got this big display, and he's got a Kuiu jacket on, Kuiu hat on.
Yeah.
That was such a huge shift.
Yeah.
With what Sitka did and what Kuiu did. And I think not only with the digital camo side of things, but exactly your point, the functionality of
Yeah.
the camo. Felt like before you wore it to try to blend in.
Yeah.
But it felt like with the digital camos, you wore it for a purpose.
Yeah.
You wore it for a reason. You wore it based on conditions and environments and or types of hunts.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I think with the digital camo, once it really started to absolutely just dominate, then it became about form and function, and how it worked, and the technology and the material.
Yeah.
I think Jason Harrison really, he brought that to the forefront.
Right.
I was enthralled by the videos that he would post about being in manufacturing facilities all over the world, explaining super down feathers and how that worked, and DWR and Gore-Tex and all this stuff.
Yep.
Sitka's owned by Gore, so they're on the Gore-Tex side of things.
Yep.
But there's other types of waterproofing stuff, and I think that just a lot like we're talking about the crossbows. That just keeps evolving and evolving and evolving and evolving. But it's interesting now, though. I feel like now you're starting to see. I think years from now we'll look back, and now there's been this shift, going from like Realtree Mossy Oak camo, realistic camo, to more digital camo, to now solids. Now we're back on the solids kick.
Yeah.
If we end up all wearing plaid again, I'm telling you what, there's going to be some old guys just taking stuff and throwing it on the floor. Son of a gun.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, now you see, what do they call it? Realtree Originals.
Yeah.
You see the tree bark again.
Yep.
You can buy a Matthews bow with tree bark, Realtree tree bark on it.
Yeah.
So it's just insane.
Yeah.
But there's a camo for everybody.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're ever looking to try to get something camo dipped, there's websites that you can go and you can see camo until you're blue in the face.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible.
Yep.
There's so much of it out there.
Yes.
And there's other brands that we're not mentioning, right? You think about gosh, I can't even think about what it's. I can't even think. Predator camo. Think about Predator camo back in the day.
Yeah.
That was like a first version of almost like a Kuiu type pattern. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, it's just insane to think how far that's come.
Yeah.
And this is what happens when we're at the show.
Yep. People are starting to file in.
Little background noise.
People are filing in.
Yeah, people are filing in, and they're sorry. It's gonna be background noise.
Yeah.
Good time to take a drink. All right, what else do we want to talk about? Man, we're just clicking right along.
Yeah, I know. I think. Do you want to just? I mean, we could just real quickly hit on the.
Nick, you and I both know I can't do anything real quickly.
Yeah, true.
No
Crap.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say just the blind stuff. I mean,
Oh,
I'm not too.
yeah.
I never hunted out of blinds growing up. I know that they've come a long way.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of guys building them now too.
Here's what I'll say about it, okay? What I remember about ground blinds, and I don't know the guys' names right off the top of my head, but I remember getting DVDs of double bull blinds. There was they looked like the craziest guys. Mm-hmm. They would go out and they would go turkey hunting, and they would have these double bull blinds, these pop-up ground blinds.
Yeah.
And they would go hunting together, and then when they got done hunting, they would lean over the turkey and they would be cutting up and laughing, and the guys would break each other's arrows. They break them over their knees. He'd take the arrows out of his quiver and break them over his knees. He'd be like, here you go. He'd break all of his arrows. He goes, well, I guess you're done turkey. You don't need these arrows. And he'd break them in half.
Oh my god.
I remember being like, what is going on? I'd be like, these guys are so cool, but yeah, they would break each other's arrows.
Oh, that's so funny.
But I remember double bull blinds before Primos bought it.
Yeah.
I remember it was double bull.
Yeah.
And man, I thought that was just the coolest thing. And they would wear black on the inside of the blind.
Yeah.
They had like this, I don't know if they called it like ninja camo or like stealth or something. I don't remember. But they had all this black gear on. I'm like, oh man, what a cool idea.
Yeah.
And they looked super cool. They had all this black on in the blind.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I was a kid, there was never any blinds,
Right.
and like as a young person. And then I started, like I said, that was my first real introduction to it, was double bull blinds.
Yep.
And then, but it's crazy now to think how much that is really just blown up. Mm-hmm. And I'm no different. I've got a couple ground blinds.
Yeah.
Even to think about and again, we can go into lots of stuff to talk about, look at turkey hunting.
Yeah.
That was those guys at Double Bull. They really were the pioneers of that.
Yeah.
nobody had ever done that before. Nobody even thought of it.
Right.
Like, so where do you set the blind? No, they were sitting the blind in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know what? It didn't move.
Yeah.
You know, and then to now you drive through with the state of Wisconsin and you can't go down a highway or interstate and not see a box blind, shooting house. What are the other names for them? Like one
Box
per
blind.
square mile. It's crazy. And
The
then
old boxy.
yeah. So now, I mean, it's crazy to think now it's not just pop-up blinds, but you've got hard-sided blinds. You've got companies like Redneck.
Yeah.
All these different types of blind companies who made these hard blinds. Man, I'd love to get my hands on a 360 blind. Golly.
Oh,
They're here.
They
No,
got a
I
booth
know.
just down
I
the
already,
way.
I already went and touched it. I already went and petted it a little and said, don't worry.
Someday.
I'll buy you someday. Whenever I can get enough money stashed away that my wife doesn't know about. No, but yeah, so it's pretty insane to think about that now.
Mm-hmm.
How far that's come. I mean, look at Ozonics. We have standard mode, boost mode.
Yeah.
Standard mode for ground blinds.
Yeah, exactly.
For enclosed airspaces, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really, really insane to think about that.
Yeah.
But I will say, Wisconsin kind of takes it to another level. When you drive down the highway, and you not only do you see blinds everywhere, but you sometimes see satellite dishes on them.
Oh, yeah.
Some people,
Zip's got a solar panel on
yeah.
his.
And there's that. The other thing to be said is another place that knows how to do their blinds is Texas. Texas has got blinds that are like borderline like condos.
Yeah, yeah. Way up there.
Yeah, like they're skyscrapers. They'll
Really
be
nice
two,
inside.
3 stories high.
Come on, man.
We were at the Dallas Safari Club show years ago, and they had this huge blind built, and it had like 2 sets of stairs.
Yeah.
Like it was like a second story.
Yeah. Taj Mahal.
Oh,
that
yeah,
one.
dude, it's insane.
Go to the Taj Mahal set.
Yep, and we're getting some background noise again. Hey, it is what it is.
Yep.
It's just part of it.
Yep.
All right, last thing we should talk about is the other. This isn't gear, because we could talk about gear all day.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I think is interesting that's really, really changed in this whole hunting thing for each of us in kind of different ways is the way that we, I don't even know what would you call this?
I would say consume hunting.
Yeah, like I don't even want to call it entertainment, but the media of hunting, I guess you could probably say.
Definitely. Yep.
When I was a kid, there wasn't the Outdoor Channel and there wasn't the Sportsman's Channel. Maybe there was, I just didn't know about it.
Yeah.
What I remember was Monster Bucks on VHS.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
I remember Monster Bucks on VHS, and I remember getting them and just, before even watching them, I would just gawk at the pictures on the box.
100%.
Like, oh, yeah. Look at that. Look at that one. You know?
Double hang time on that one.
Yeah, double droppy. And I would just look at the VHS box and then watch it over and over over every single hunt.
Yep.
That was my first experience on kind of the whole what was to become this huge thing that it is now.
Yeah.
So for me, it was VHS, Monster Bucks on VHS.
Yeah.
Then it kind of became DVDs.
DVDs, yeah.
Then that's really when I became more aware of the Outdoor Channel, Sportsman's Channel, or the Outdoor Channel first.
Yep.
And then the Sportsman's Channel, all these other types of channels. And that really took over for a long time.
Yeah.
It felt like we kind of lived through the day and age of like the hunting personalities.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. And all these, it was funny at first. I remember being like, gosh, there's all these like husband wives.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was a lot of husband wives hunting.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think I remember Bone Collector starting.
Yeah.
When that first started. And I remember Michael Waddell just at Realtree way back.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just you just used to watch Bill Jordan and David Blanton. You know, those names were always synonymous with what they did. And then seeing what Michael Waddell started and what he did, and then I think we all kind of lived through like the Lee and Tiffany era and what they're still doing.
Yeah.
And a lot of different people that just kind of came along, and that was really the TV day.
Yeah.
But now it's interesting now, and I think you kind of grew up through the TV day.
Yeah. I mean, when
but
I was a kid,
more kind of the tail end of it, right?
When I was a kid, I didn't watch any cartoons. I watched ESPN and Jury Outdoors on a DVD.
There you go.
That's what I did. That's all I watched as a kid. I watched so many Drury Outdoors DVDs. I mean, we had tons of them, and they would just be playing constantly. So I definitely saw the DVD side of things, but pretty soon, though, it got into more YouTube and stuff like that.
See, that's the thing. See, for me, the YouTube thing, that didn't, as a kid, I never remember, that was never even a thing.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting because there's people that are doing this whole hunting thing that don't even give a diddly about TV.
Yeah.
That's shifted.
Yeah, big
now
time.
everything has gone so digital.
Yeah, way digital.
Way digital, right?
Yeah.
Now there's, look who you did internship with, Midwest Whitetail.
Yeah.
Midwest Whitetail, I remember they've been, Bill Winke way back in the day, his whole shtick was he put out a hunting video every single day.
Yeah.
Remember the old Midwest Whitetail logo?
Yeah, yeah.
I wish they'd go back to that. I love
Classic
that
logo.
That logo
That
is so
thing's
awesome. But, yeah, I remember a buddy of mine's brother was obsessed with it. He watched it every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they've never been on TV. It's only YouTube.
Right.
Now there's all these people that are just making a living on social media.
Yeah.
Just making a living on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really interesting to see how it's changed.
Yeah.
I think it's, we could go into we can go down a rabbit hole if it's a good or bad change, but it's changing, right? It's evolving. It will continue to.
Yep.
Be interesting to see how it's going to change next.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just always, all of it's so much faster.
Yeah, it's
it just
constantly
happens so
evolving.
much faster.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yep.
But it's really, really interesting. And like I said, and the other thing I think you could say, I mean, look what we're doing right now. 5 years ago, if you said podcast, there was a few people doing podcasts, but not that many.
Yeah.
Not that many.
Yep.
And now look at it.
Yeah.
We're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Right?
In Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania. And I think that's I think the interesting thing that about it is it's always, I feel like with all these things, whether it's been VHS or DVD, TV, YouTube, social media, podcasts, it gives a person, it gives a company, it gives everybody an opportunity to have a platform to talk about stuff, which I think is really, really good.
Yep.
I mean, even we were talking about that on the way here. The other thing you could say is look what and I don't know him from Adam, but look what Steve Rinella's did.
Right.
Steve Rinella's got his Meat Eater shows on Netflix.
Yeah.
Netflix.
History Channel.
The History Channel,
yeah,
right?
It's insane.
So all of a sudden it's it's not just this hunting space, it's crossing over.
Yeah.
You look at for example, Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, really interesting guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That everybody knows. There's only a handful of people that you can go anywhere in the United States and say their name, and everybody knows who they are.
Exactly. Yep.
Taylor Swift, Trump, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Michael Jordan,
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody, I mean, there's more.
Yeah.
Right? There's famous actors and blah, blah, blah. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he's an avid hunter.
Right.
Right? And it's really cool to see in his perspective on things.
Right.
And what he thinks and why he's doing it.
Yeah.
And so, it's been really, really cool. I really enjoyed that part of it. Well, I enjoy it and I kind of get tired of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
But yeah, no, it's really kind of cool to see how it's all changed.
Yeah,
and it continues to change.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we said earlier too, I mean, we just thought that this would be a cool place to do this podcast just because there's so many. I mean, look at this place. I mean, look at all these people.
Yeah.
There's so many new things here. There's so much to see, so many different products, and I mean, you name it, and it's here. And so we just thought that this would be a really cool spot to kind of have this conversation. So. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And like I said, I said this on the way to Pennsylvania, and I think sometimes the tendency I have when I get to these shows is because these can be kind of a grind.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
It's hard for all of us to be away from families and responsibilities back home and things we got going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 9 days of show plus 2 days, a couple days travel set up on each end.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we get kind of in the thick of it, you kind of start to kind of get blinders on, and you just kind of going through the day.
Yep.
Meaning not when we're in the booth, it's awesome getting to talk to people, but when you do have a chance to kind of walk around.
Yes.
But I think the thing that, the big thing that I'm going to try to really do this show season is, and this is it's on the, if you ever watched Ted Lasso show, and I've heard this quote before, be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think there's a lot of truth in that, even when we're here there's so much stuff to look at, and maybe not everything we all agree with.
Yeah.
Not only from a gear perspective, but from people that may be trying to produce videos or whatever, or the things that they say, things that they do.
Yeah.
But be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah.
There's always, we can always try to find the good in people and good in things.
Yeah.
And you never know. Like I feel like I always hope that we have that for people that walk into the booth, that people are curious and not judgmental.
Yeah.
Because when people are judgmental, like, oh, well, meh, and it's like, man, dude, I feel like you're really missing out on a really great opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Because at the end of the day, an ozonics can help you when you get deer on the downwind side, so you don't get winded as often.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we can do that, we can help you be more successful. Like, wouldn't you want to do that? And when people start to kind of let their guard down, they think about it like, yeah, man, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, but yeah, no, it's really, really good. Like I said, we could probably have probably 3 or 4 podcasts just about this.
Oh, easily.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. We literally, I feel like we've kind of just scraped the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll revisit it.
Maybe there'll be a part 2.
Yeah.
Who knows? Well, hey, listen, we better wrap it up.
Yep.
I keep looking at my clock. One of the things that's really cool, I will say about this show, some other shows have started to kind of, I guess you could say copycat it. Great American Outdoor Show is owned by the NRA.
Yep.
The NRA, usually 10 to 5 minutes before the show opens, they do the national anthem.
Yep.
Which is pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
it's awesome. It's really cool.
The Open Season Sportsman's Expo shows have done that too.
Yeah.
Which one of the guys that used to help manage this and run this, he's gone to that show.
Yeah.
I don't think he's there anymore, but they used to, and then so he started doing that at those shows.
Yeah.
He did the national anthem.
Yeah,
I think it's
awesome.
kind of a neat idea.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I think sometimes where was that show that we did? They did the Pledge of Allegiance. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah.
Just to, come together. I think that's important.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yep. So, all right, let's wrap it up.
Okay.
Another podcast in the books. Ozonics Killerwinds podcast, episode 942, done. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you're in Harrisburg, if you're at the Iowa Deer Classic, if you're at the Wisconsin Open Season Sportsman Expo,
come see us.
come see us.
Say what's up.
Hey,
We'll see you next week.
stay classy.